Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm Reverend Sherry Woodbury, the church's settled minister. Whether you are attending online or here in person, this Sunday morning or sometime later in the week, I'm glad you have chosen to be part of our worship service together. Worship from the Latin means to remember that which is of worth. And so each week we connect back into community to reground ourselves in our highest values. A special welcome to visitors. This congregation is a community of all ages and abilities. It is a community with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities. It's a community of diverse cultural and class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this space. If you're joining us online, I encourage you to create a YouTube account and sign in when you attend that way. This will allow you to participate in the comments for things like joys and concerns. And of course, everyone can subscribe to our channel and share videos that you like with others. For those here in person, every week after the Sunday service, we have coffee hour downstairs in the common room. That's the room right below the sanctuary here, and you can get to it out either door if you go down the stairs right outside the door. To learn about activities you might want to take part in this week, you can use the QR code or links in the program, and there also are some printed e-news in the foyer. Our church occupies the traditional treaty lands of the Omaha and Otoe-Missouri tribal nations, whose sovereignty existed long before the state of Nebraska. We'd also like to express our respect to the Ponca, Winnebago, and Santee Sioux tribes, all of Nebraska, and the many others represented in the Omaha area. Our hope is that the land acknowledgement is just a beginning as we all together continue to educate ourselves and support causes, charities, and rights of Indigenous people in our area. Welcome. At this time, I'd like to invite forward Robbie Lewis to light our flaming chalice. Robbie turns 9 years old today. You can join me in the chalice lighting words that are in your order of service. All together, spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. All right, thank you, Robbie, and happy birthday. From the loneliness of troubled times we come
to discover that we are not alone. Of those who hold to love.
I invite you to rise if that feels good in your body and join in singing our opening hymn, number 1000 in the Teal Hymnal. Okay, children are invited forward or in from their classrooms to the front pew here so we can watch a story together.
I Walk with Vanessa, a story about a simple act of kindness by Kara Scoet.
Loser.
For children, how you can help someone who is being bullied. When you see someone being hurt or bullied, there's often something you can do, no matter how small it may seem to you. It makes a big difference to the person who is being hurt. Here are some suggestions. Be extra friendly to that person. Include them in your play and games. Let them know you will not join in when other kids are being mean or bullying. The girl in this book noticed what happened to the girl who was being bullied. Then she thought about how she might feel and what she should do. When you see mean behavior or bullying, ask yourself, how would I feel if that happened to me? It is important to always be safe when you respond to bullying behavior. If someone is being hurt or bullied, you can tell a trusted grown-up. Letting someone know help is needed is not tattling. Tattling is getting someone in trouble, and telling is getting someone out of trouble. As in this story, actions can be contagious. Kindness multiplies. One small act of kindness can inspire more kinds of acts. So talk to others about your ideas for showing kindness and invite them to join you.
are still folks online and if they can hear me. We're having a little tech difficulty. It might be because we had a wedding and a lot of things got reset. I was going to share during Joys and Concerns that our wonderful new AV Tech coordinator, Kindness Bryan, had a concussion. And so she's not here. She's home resting, which is where we want her to be. So thank you to our volunteers who are keeping things going. Usually when we have a tech problem during the service, we are able to post a good recording afterwards. So I hope that will be available for folks who are trying to watch online. Okay. Each week, we practice sharing with others through a community offering. Half of undesignated gifts are donated to a cause which resonates with Unitarian Universalist values, generally a local organization. If you're online or want to give with your smartphone, you can use the QR code or the link provided. Our Share the Plate recipient for January is Restoring Dignity, which serves refugee families in the Omaha area. They help with housing advocacy, cleaning, education and supplies, home makeovers, furniture and household donations, COVID-19 communication, information in multiple languages, referrals, all kinds of things. Restoring Dignity helps with a focus on education and advocacy. So thank you for giving as you are able. We come to the time for sharing of joys and concerns. This gives us an opportunity to let those who care for us know about both the wonderful things that are happening that might lift them up to, as well as the challenges we are facing. And oftentimes, when we do that, people want to offer us their support. As I mentioned, Kindness Bryan, our AV Tech coordinator, is home recovering from a concussion, and we send her healing wishes and hope that resolves soon and with no long-term effects. And a happy birthday again to Robbie Lewis, who turned 9 today and lit our chalice earlier. Colin, what do we have from email and online?
From Terry Lynn, also happy birthday to her friend Patricia Pyatt. From Melissa Gibson. Speedy and healthy recovery for all those dealing with colds, flu, and COVID. And a milestone event approaches for our wonderful minister emeritus, Ron Knapp, Reverend Ron Knapp, who turns 90 on Saturday, January 27th. Let's shower him with cards and best wishes. The address will be included in the e-blast that will be sent out later this week. There will be a concert on January 28th for Ron. Not certain of the time, but that will also be sent out in the e-blast later on this week.
As we call into our circle of care, all who know both joy and hardship, let us lift our voices together. Our centering song is number 1009, Meditation on Breathing. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. On the wings of this music, I invite you into a time of contemplation. I'll share a guided meditation followed by a time of silence, which I'll end with the sound of the bell. During the silent period, you may wish to meditate or pray, or you may simply want to feel your heart open, sending waves of compassion out to all in our community and the wider world who suffer in body, mind, or spirit. In preparation for this time, you may wish now to gently close your eyes, sit tall, and get comfortable in your seat. Let us invite into this space a spirit of love, the God of your understanding, if you understand it as such, or simply a love great enough to hold all of us. May we sense the presence of such love around us here. As you breathe deeply in and out, perhaps you are aware of the healing energy of this gathered community. Let us rest in this circle and add to it our own heartfelt desires for wholeness and peace. In the sanctuary of our own hearts, let us offer caring to the raw and hurting places within ourselves. Let us offer love to any places inside that are frozen and unfeeling because it is too hard to feel. Let us draw strength from the circle of love gathered here. I invite you to remember the love that flowed to you in the past, too, and feel that love still pulsing within. might let that love within radiate out from your heart center, out through your fingertips, down through your feet, up to your eyes and ears, tingling clear through the crown of your head, so that you are lit up with love like a living chalice. Spirit of love, may we heed the call to wholeness that moves within ourselves, knowing that we are worthy. May we share the love that we have received and use our love power to heal our world, knowing that we are needed. May those gathered into this community, all within the sound of my voice, come together again and again to nurture hope and add continually to the current of love. Spirit of life, source of all, love greater than our imagining, help us ever to orbit around the great sun of love. Amen. Now, a time of silence together. For our reading this morning, I share a poem I wrote in 2011, adapted. It's titled Roots, or depending on your accent, Roots. Descend into the light within, the free-flowing, age-old, luminous presence. Let it take you to the trees, the hills and hollers, carved out by wind and water and time, the square breaking limestone plains beneath our feet, the shady canyons full of frogs and ferns. Follow the river of your life as if the current carries you effortlessly. You don't have to try so hard. You can just be. For in being your true bright self, you renew the world. Listen to your child's laughter. See how she wants you to chase her, giggling, and to catch her and cuddle. These are the natural instincts of all human beings, laughing and snuggling. Remember who you really are. Descend down the generations. You have been painter and farmer, naturalist and coal miner's daughter, immigrant on the plains, in the mountains, once on the shore, fisher on the fjords of Norway, tree dweller on the Isle of Man. You were from the line of Peace Pilgrim and Gandhi, from Rilke and Rumi, from the all times, all places, always has been, ever shall be. Be a vessel and traverse that shining sea. You are from earth and air, fire and water, bird and tree. inside, outside, upside down, backward and forward and all around. The motion is your life in orbit around the great sun of love. In the early years of mothering my child, with intermittent sleep, a babe ever in arms, a toddler who wanted mommy's constant attention, I sometimes felt like I was pouring my love into a bottomless well. All the parents are laughing. In moments of exhaustion, I wondered if all of this caring would ever boomerang back to me, or if this sweet child would drain me to the last drop of energy. And if there's anyone here who has a new baby or is planning a family, please know that every child and every parent is different, and I'm not predicting your future. This was just my reality. My daughter is 14 now. Sometime between 4 and 5, things began to shift. All that affection, patience, and heart-aching love I had poured into this dear little being, I began to get it back. I began to regularly hear my own words spoken in her little voice. "Mommy, I love you so much. I'm so glad you're my mommy." I'm hugged exuberantly, sometimes a dozen times a day, still at 14. I remember times when my child at 8 or 10 or 12, needed reassurance and would recite to herself what I'd long said to her: "Mommy will always love me, no matter what." Because my little one knows that, because she has experienced the truth of how loved she is deep down in her soul, that love rebounds back, not only to me, but to many people in her life. She hugs her friends. If she accidentally stumbles over someone, she turns to check on them. Her teachers have long told us that she shows many kindnesses to other kids and speaks up to bullies, like the little girl in the story. I don't know what she'll do when she grows up, but she's already a force of love in the world, and I have no doubt that she will be a part of healing the hurts around her. It strikes me that what we have here is a strange inversion of Newton's third law. You probably remember this law of physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. As Newton realized, whenever objects interact with each other, they exert forces upon each other. And likewise, in the human realm, whenever people interact with each other, they influence each other. Only in the case of people, instead of a reaction that is opposite, we tend to see a response that is similar. Hate begets hate. Hurt people hurt people. And as I have seen in my 14-year parenting experiment thus far, loved people love people. That's the amazing opportunity that all of us who are parents, all of us who have relationships with children, have before us. Not only to create a strong foundation for those children, but to send ripples of love throughout society and down generations, to spread love power. Love is one of the values that has been proposed as a core value of Unitarian Universalism in the revision of the document that expresses who we are as a faith. That document happens to be Article 2 of the bylaws of our National Unitarian Universalist Association. The introduction to the Values and Covenant section of the proposal says this: "We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love." So love is the foundation. And you can see in this flower graphic, and there's various versions of the flower graphic around, that the 7 values are depicted like the petals of the flower. Well, 6 of them. In the center of the flower, that's where love is. Love is in the center. In the most up-to-date statement of the proposal, here's how love is defined. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. So those are a few ways of thinking about love power. We can think of it as being as real and reliable as Newton's third law of physics, only with love power, like begets like. And love is also what holds us together as Unitarian Universalists, the foundation of everything we do and are. In a story shared by a website called A Mighty Girl, a young woman named Keisha Thomas is faced with the question of what love calls her to do. It was 1996, and Keisha, who is Black, was 18 years old then. The Ku Klux Klan was holding a rally in her hometown of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hundreds of protesters turned out to tell the white supremacist organization that they were not welcome in the progressive college town. At one point during the event, a man sporting an SS tattoo and a t-shirt emblazoned with a Confederate flag ended up on the protesters' side of the fence. A small group began to chase him. He was quickly knocked to the ground and kicked and hit with placard sticks. People began to shout, "Kill the Nazi." This was in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 1996. Kill the Nazi. I can understand the anger of the crowd, especially those like Keisha, African Americans who've lived in fear of groups like the KKK all their lives, lived in fear for generations, with a centuries-long history of death by lynching and all manner of violence, including the police violence that has come into the public spotlight as a continuing problem in the past decade. Such a history of trauma warrants a great deal of anger. And being deliberately intimidated by people who don't see you as a full human being, as worthy of respect, now the hurt would run deep. The instinct for self-preservation and for lashing out would be so strong. When I learned of this story, I asked myself, what would I do if I was in Keisha's shoes, witnessing the counter-protesters to the KKK, their own behavior turning ugly? What would I do? We know that people who have been hurt often do pass that hurt along to others in turn. Children who grow up being physically abused by their parents, or who witness one parent turn violent on another, are more likely to become perpetrators of domestic violence themselves. There's more to it than that, of course. There are forces far beyond the family influence how our children learn to solve problems and relate to others. It's not just what goes on in families, but in communities and society as a whole that influences these outcomes. Whatever the source, violence tends to perpetuate itself. The hurt often passes down in generations in one way or another. It's almost like a law of physics. Sometimes the people that hurt people hurt are themselves. I saw that pattern with so many of the patients on the psychiatric floor during my internship as a hospital chaplain in 2013. There were many kinds of sad stories. I'm particularly haunted by the young women admitted who had turned to drugs and alcohol, who engaged in unsafe behavior, who developed personality disorders. So many of these young women had been hurt by sexual abuse and assault. It had become difficult for them to value themselves any more than their assailants had. Their attempts to escape from painful memories and feelings through drugs and alcohol could not release them from the past and created additional problems. Yet there is cause for hope. Though the pattern is common, it's far from inevitable that those who have been hurt will end up visiting similar hurts on others or getting stuck in a downward spiral of self-harm. It doesn't have to go that way. Sometimes, in a triumph of the human spirit, just the opposite happens. The hurt person, who could pass their hurt along or slowly self-destruct, instead becomes a force for good. Such was the case with Patrick Stewart, the Shakespearean actor. You may remember him as Captain Picard on TV's Star Trek: The Next Generation. You can do the hand motion with me if you're a Star Trek fan here. Engage. He would say from the helm of the Enterprise, make it so. In fact, let's bring him out. Advertise the special guest. All right. So he's still in his Enterprise uniform here. If you're a Trek fan, you may have seen him in Newer Deads when he returned for the more recent spin-off series, Star Trek Picard. As it turns out, Patrick Stewart's father served in World War II where he experienced the horrors of war. Stewart tells how later, quote, "In civilian life, my father was an angry, unhappy, and often frustrated man who was not able to control his emotions or his hands. As a child," Stewart says, "I witnessed his repeated violence against my mother, and the terror and misery he caused was such that if I felt I could have succeeded, I would have killed him." Well, Patrick Stewart grew up in a time and place when everyone looked the other way. Neighbors, doctors, law enforcement, even though people knew that his father regularly beat his mother. There's no guarantee that a young person raised in such a dangerous environment will find their way to healing. Stewart wrote, "In my adult life, I've struggled to overcome the bad lessons of my father's behavior, this corrosive example of male irresponsibility. Yet ultimately, he did not fall into the pattern that had been set for him. He found his own refuge in acting. And over time, Stewart became a passionate advocate for ending violence against women. Though he never had children, it's a safe bet that he would have been a different sort of father figure, too. I'm grateful that my own father made a choice to parent differently than his father. I'm not sure if he had a particular role model for it. When my dad grew up in rural Iowa in the 1940s and 50s, corporal punishment as a method of disciplining children was culturally pretty normal. But my dad made a decision when my brother and I were small that he was not going to spank his children. Later, he became a child abuse investigator and a social worker, protecting vulnerable children. My mother did things a little differently too. She herself had not had a mother who was capable of actively parenting her. Yet my mother was such a steady presence for me and my brother, pouring so much care onto us. Mom also chose a healing profession. She became a nurse and later a counselor. So for me, these two people that are so dear to me illustrate a choice that is also possible, the choice to turn toward love and to send healing rather than hurt down the family line. They're not the only ones to make this choice, far from it. The dozen-plus couples I have worked with as a wedding officiant and pastor have given me glimpses into the same sort of growth over generations. In the course of the premarital counseling and just getting to know the couples I work with, I often learn something of their story, their journey from the family they were born into to what they want to create for their family of choice. Now, the couples assessment and relationship strengthening program I work with actually prompts some of this sort of discussion, but I find that most couples have already begun the process of sifting in their private conversations. Over and over, I see how the generation I'm working with values the best of what they gained from their families and wants to carry that on, and how they also recognize sometimes, like my parents did, practices and ways of being that are not so healthy, areas in which they aspire to do things differently. That's such a critical part of the spiritual evolution of our species, I think. For family is where we first learn how to be human. Perhaps that's why Mother Teresa has said, if you want to create world peace, go home and love your family. Others play important parts too. Friends and communities like this congregation, everyone with whom we come in contact at some level. I've met young people in our Unitarian Universalist congregations who've received the love and nurture of not only their families, but their church community during a formative period of their life. And these young people are hungry to make a difference because loved people are impelled from deep down to love other people. I feel in every fiber of my being that my ability to share love is a direct result of all the love that I have received over my lifetime. and even in the generations before, and that healing that went on before I showed up. The signs of this love may seem modest at times: nurturing meals cooked by my husband, quiet listening of a friend, cuddles I share with my daughter, a sense of companionship felt with others in a sanctuary on a Sunday morning. Even a kind word from a stranger at the grocery store or in the playground. It all adds up. The cumulative effect of all these droplets of love falling on my life is a torrent, swift and sure. It's a river that carries me even when I cannot swim. And I do have those moments, as we all do. The love that has come to me and that flows through me to others flows on to return to that great sea of primordial love that I understand to be our source. And from that endless ocean will arise new clouds, new rain to end every drought. When the pain I encounter is larger than my little life, when it seems like the refreshing rain of love in the world has been spent, still the current of love remains strong. For the streams of love from years past pour into the river of today. If I turn around and look back, I can see countless tributaries flowing onward into this moment. Our human heritage of activists and mystics, of lovers of humanity and lovers of life, has left a legacy of love that can comfort and inspire us at any time, no matter who we are or where we came from. From these roaring rapids of soul force, some of the lives that most echo in my being include those of the Unitarian Universalist Prophetic Sisterhood, Eddie Hillesum, Mahatma Gandhi, and Peace Pilgrim. You probably have your own list of love luminaries. I know there are countless others, recognized and unknown, whose loving waters mingle with mine too. The transforming power of love, as we have long called it in our tradition, becomes a palpable force, as real as gravity or entropy. Whatever family lines we come from, we all have as part of our human heritage such figures whose lives ablaze with love. We all, I believe, long to orbit around the great sun of love. During my stint as a hospital chaplain in the psychiatric unit, I listened to people's stories of what in their lives had brought them to this difficult point. I found myself digging deep to stay in touch with my own sources of hope and resilience. And I thought often of one of the spiritual figures who moves me, Eddie Hillesum. If you haven't heard about Eddie, she was a remarkable young woman who ministered to those around her in the Nazi work camps. Her challenge and gift was simply to be able to take it all in: the horror of genocide, a systematic form of hatred and violence, and yet to keep tenderly serving the victims without letting her own spirit become infected with hatred for anyone. She took that bad energy in and cleansed it, holding fast to something pure, this kind of spiritual alchemy. When I read her diaries, it stirred something deep in me. I recognized Eddie's very personal ministering in the Nazi camps as a practice of nonviolence, true principled nonviolence, a practice that was calling to me on that psych unit of the hospital, that might call on any of us. As Eddie demonstrated, the human being can act much like an air purifier that takes the contaminants out of the air we breathe. A human being can be a spiritual purifier, filtering out the hate from our environment and restoring the pure, clean air of love. This makes healing possible across generations and throughout our social environs. In some toxic situations, it helps make survival possible. Let's turn back to Keisha, the Black teenager in Ann Arbor who saw other protesters against a Ku Klux Klan rally turning violent. As people began to shout, "Kill the Nazi," the high school student, fearing that a mob mentality had taken over, decided to act. Keisha threw herself on top of one of the men that she had come to protest, protecting him from the blows. That's a Ku Klux Klan rallier that she's protecting from other people's violent anger. Later, she explained, someone had to step out of the pack and say, "This isn't right." I knew what it was like to be hurt. The many times that happened, Keisha said, I wish someone would have stood up for me. Violence is violence. Nobody deserves to be hurt, especially not for an idea. Keisha never heard from the Klan member after that day. But months later, a young man came up to thank her, telling her that the man she had protected was his father. For Keisha, learning that he had a son brought even greater significance to her loving act. As she observed, quote, "For the most part, people who hurt, they come from hurt. It's a cycle. Let's say they had killed him or hurt him really bad. How does the son feel? Does he carry on the violence?" Now, I don't know any more about Keisha than what I've shared with you from Mighty Girl. I don't know who loved her or mentored her, but it's probably no coincidence that she comes from a people who have known not only centuries of hate and hurt, a people who have every reason to be bitter, but also from a people who have put into practice, perhaps more than any other in our country, the principle of nonviolence, which is to say love in action. This is the story of nonviolence, people responding to hurt with love for both themselves and the hurters. It was civil rights leader MLK Jr. who summed it up by saying, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Now, don't get me wrong, acting from love does not necessarily require putting yourself in harm's way to protect or enlighten others. We can't demand that from anyone, including today's generation of civil rights leaders. Acting from love can also mean calling people to account for their behavior, as movements like Me Too encourage people to do. Speaking the truth in the hope that others will learn and grow and make better choices, as we tell our children, choices more in keeping with their own highest potential. Those of us who have more power in society, like men and white people, straight people and cis people, and those who are currently able-bodied, and you could probably add more to that list, we have greater opportunity, at less risk to ourselves, to speak the truth and call us all toward love. As Patrick Stewart has done, stay up there, buddy, as Patrick Stewart has done on the issue of violence against women, and as many Unitarian Universalists have done over the last 2 centuries, advocating for the abolition of slavery and women's suffrage, for equal treatment for GLBT people, and for reproductive justice, for the earth, and many other issues. But it's not just the big heroic acts recorded in the history books that count, like those for which we remember King and Gandhi, and such UU luminaries as Theodore Parker and Margaret Fuller. When members of this congregation today carry out so many small, seemingly unremarkable, seemingly private acts of love and kindness, you're pushing human spiritual evolution in the direction of love. When you offer a warm welcome to visitors in this church, many of whom have been prompted by some secret hurt to come here, you make healing possible. When you care for children in a way that nurtures them and models love for them, when you reach out to a friend in need, you are on the fulcrum, turning the great lever of love. And it's in your social action work too. When you help make meals for youth emergency services with our church team, when you work to get out the vote with You're the Vote or other organizations as the next election nears, with every step, this congregation takes to practice the liberating love at the heart of our faith, you are adding to the great current of love. Keep it up, and I believe over time we will see that love rebound in our lives and the common life of this community, just as the love of my daughter has now come back to me in spades. It can be harder to believe that in times like ours. I know these are discouraging days. So it helps me to remember that it has happened before. I remember back to 2015, a time when the courageous action of UUs, along with that of many other activists, culminated in a landmark Supreme Court ruling that said it is love that makes a marriage. That this most basic institution of society is defined not by anatomy or social roles or genders, but by love. On the day of the court's historic ruling that June, my child came home from music camp and shared a song that she had learned. She was 5 then. And the song, as I can remember it, goes something like this. Love is something that you give away, give away, give away. Love is something that you give away, and then you end up having more. And I thought, how appropriate on that day, and how true. Love is an inexhaustible force which multiplies when shared. And this is why, despite the millennia of suffering that humans have endured thus far, and all the suffering and bleakness that remains right now, I still have great hope. I have hope for the future because love persists and remains. Because love is a force of healing that passes down generations and spreads throughout human communities. Because love, too, can be powerful, even more powerful than violence and hurt. Wholeness has a tendency to replicate itself, too. And since we all have this innate yearning for wholeness, that evolutionary pull toward it, some might say a spiritual pull toward wholeness, if we all do our part, we can help bend the long arc of the universe toward love. May it be so. Or perhaps I should say, in the spirit of Captain Picard, make it so. Let us all make it so. I invite you to rise for a closing hymn, number 368, Now Let Us Sing, and we'll do the words that are suggested in the hymnal. We recognize and remember how very powerful is the love within us, a force that passes down generations, makes healing possible in hurting communities, and pulls us all toward greater wholeness. As individuals and as a church community, let us keep such liberating love at the center of our lives. May it be so. Amen.